So while Barry's getting set up here, I'm going to preface this. We met Barry this past summer at the National. We were introduced by Jeff Rosenberg from TriStar, a hobby legend.
Also a previous guest.
Also a previous guest. And Barry, he's going to explain what he does for those who don't know. He's from MeiGray, and we had a shirt that we wanted Barry to look at, and we'll take a look at that later. But after we spoke about sports and the hobby for about 20 minutes, he almost missed his flight. In his carry-on, there's I don't know how many game-used jerseys and shoes that he had to take for people. But as soon as we left, Chris and I looked at each other and were like, we need Barry to speak at our next event. We didn't know when the event would be. When we scheduled it, we spoke to him. It was only fitting. So we're honored to have him here. And Barry Meisel, everybody.
Thank you very much, everybody. So you're looking at a dinosaur. They found a fossil, they found a dinosaur. I go back to the early to mid-70s. I'm 67 years old. I collected cards. Some of the stories I heard from some of your earlier great guests, the things I lived as a young boy and then as a young man. And I actually started, for those of you who are fossils as well, I started the Garden Sports Card Company in 1977. I was buying unopened cases from Topps and making sets, and that's how I put myself through college. I wanted to be a sports writer, and thankfully, in my first life, I was. I went to school in Binghamton, New York. I started as an intern at the Binghamton Sun Bulletin, and unlike the others, my show and tell is going to be part of my story. And I thought, as a card guy, as a card collector, who ran a business through college, sold the business when I was about to start my career to become a sports writer, I found out that there were dozens of people, crazy people, collecting what we were calling game-worn jerseys. Nobody knew what that was. What's a game-worn jersey? Well, we defined it back then as a jersey worn in a game. As a sports writer, I said, wow, that's interesting. It's dirty laundry. I'm probably the only guy in this room, and my girlfriend can attest, if there's dirty laundry on my floor, she doesn't touch it, because it could be worth thousands. But back then, game-worn jerseys were dirty laundry that the teams were throwing away. And as a sports writer, I thought, I'd like to have a jersey, an actual game-worn jersey from the team I covered that was worn, at that time I was covering hockey, on the ice, from every team I covered. I thought that'd be cool. So my first piece,
I got you.
1978-79, from a nobody heard of junior league team in Binghamton, New York. This is the first jersey I ever owned. And this is the start of MeiGray, because back then, MeiGray started in 1997. This was 1979, 18 years earlier. I said, how can I prove that this was actually worn? At the time, it didn't matter. I paid $40 for it. I knew it was worn because the equipment manager gave it to me when I handed him 2 20s. End of story.
Real quick. Hockey sweaters are the best ever. Like that, I would wear. I should have worn that tonight if you would have let me.
You could. I would let you.
But yeah, that's awesome. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No problem. So, thankfully, I had a very nice career. I moved to the Morristown Daily Record in 1984 when I covered the New Jersey Devils and the New York Mets. I moved to the New York Daily News in 1985 when I covered for the next 12 years the New York Islanders, the New York Rangers, the New Jersey Devils, and the New York Giants. And I wanted a jersey from every team I covered. Well, then the hobby, as we all know that even in the 80s and 90s, cards had its ups and downs, but there were dozens, now hundreds, of collectors collecting game-worn jerseys. We were the weak sister of the hobby. It was, how do you know it's real? Well, I got it from a friend who knew the equipment manager's brother-in-law, or I got it in a Goodwill, or blah, blah, blah. Well, in the late 80s and the early 90s, teams actually started to have garage sales, and people started to collect game-worn jerseys. Fast forward to 1994. I am still at the New York Daily News. I am covering the New York Rangers. Many of you in this room know that the Rangers hadn't won a Stanley Cup in 54 years, and they won the Stanley Cup. I happened to be friends with another of these crazy collectors who liked game-worn jerseys. His name happened to be Neil Smith, the president and general manager, the architect of the team, and he was a collector like me. Game-worn jerseys now starting to get a little notoriety. And he had this bag, a garbage bag of jerseys under his desk. He said, "What do you think we can do with these?" And they were the 40 jerseys, 20 blue, 20 white, maybe 30 of each, that were worn in the Stanley Cup Finals from the New York Rangers. And I said, "Don't do anything with that bag, give me that bag." And in 1994 and 95, while I was at the Daily News, I advised the New York Rangers. We did a deal with the Society for the Prevention of Child Abuse, which was one of the Rangers' top charitable partnerships back then, and auctioned these jerseys off. Unfortunately, and at places not far from Mr. Brigandi's place in New York back in the 90s, everybody thought they were going to start selling game-worn jerseys. And that's where we saw for the first time, those of us who were collecting game-worn jerseys, the fakes were everywhere. People were literally going to legitimate outfits, buying actual authentics, and doctoring them up. Mark Messier, you know the old story about 5 million people claim they were at a game, that's a famous game. 50,000 people claim they had Mark Messier's Game 7 game-worn jersey. And of course, the fakes were ripping people off day after day after day. At the same time, I happen to be a guy who cares about the hobby, cares about authenticity. I had an idea, and this is how MeiGray was formed. There has to be a way for a company to partner with the teams of the leagues and prove things are real. These were the days in game-worn jerseys where you'd ask a guy for a photo of the jersey you were buying, and he'd say, "Photo? It's a needle in a haystack to find a photo." And I said, "Wait a second. If the jersey's real, how could it be a needle in a haystack?" I mean, the players of the day, Wayne Gretzky, Mark Messier, there were millions of pictures, but photo matching wasn't a thing. It took me about 2 years, but I started MeiGray Group. I said, we're going to partner with teams and leagues, and we are going to prove that game-worn jerseys are legit. So I happen to, going back in this story, I happen to have a game-worn jersey from the New York Rangers Stanley Cup Championship, Game 7.
You got it.
This is Brian Noonan, a good player on the team, but the jersey is filled with stick marks and rips and tears.
It's filled with stick marks, rips and tears. And what MeiGray started to do, let me get the right photo, and the division MeiGray authenticated, literally start to photo match jerseys. This was back in the late 1990s.
So is this one of the first jerseys that you...
This set was one of the first sets. Obviously, many of these jerseys went to collectors in the child abuse auction, but I wanted one for my collection. And if you saw this real close, you'd see one of the early MeiGray photo matches where we're proving, we're showing you the stains, we're showing you the stick marks. We're proving that this jersey is this photo, and this happens to be a picture of Brian Noonan holding the Stanley Cup in the aftermath of the Rangers winning the Cup.
I thank you for gifting this to me, Mr. Meisel. It was great. Real quick, you did mention something about that game, Game 7, and the goal that was scored, this jersey.
Well, I will believe this to my death. For those of you who are hockey fans, Mark Messier is credited with scoring the game-winning goal in that game. The Rangers won 3-2. Late in the second period, he scored the goal that gave the Rangers a 3-1 win, a 3-1 lead, but he didn't put the puck in the net. This guy did. There was a mad scramble in front. The Vancouver goalie stopped the shot and then knocked the puck into the net, and Brian Noonan happened to jab it and should have gotten credit. But again, for those of you who are hockey fans, Mark Messier, who delivered the Stanley Cup, who was the Messiah, got credit for the goal, and no one had the guts to say, "You didn't knock it in, Noonan did." So Messier gets credit for the goal, but I know as a Ranger nut who grew up waiting for the team to win the Stanley Cup, That's the jersey that won the Rangers the Stanley Cup.
I see my father in the back nodding in agreement. He was in the building that night, and he says it every year because we're still waiting for another cup.
But the question is there a photo match of Noonan?
There's not, because there was a big scramble. Believe me, we looked. There's a huge scramble. You know, in those hockey scrambles, 10 guys are on the ice. Everybody's watching the puck. Noonan is covered by 2 Vancouver Canuck guys that are trying to knock him away, and I could not photo match it to the goal, but the next best thing is photo matching a Stanley Cup jersey with the player lifting the Stanley Cup over his head.
There you go.
Pretty awesome.
So that's what MeiGray has become. When we make our deals, when we sell our jerseys, when we authenticate, we promise to prove that the jersey in your hands is the jersey in the photo. We find the photo and prove it to you. A couple of major items earlier today by some of the earlier speakers were discussed. MeiGray photo matched the Babe Ruth called shot that went for $24 million about a year and a half ago. It took us about 6 months, but we're talking about the business of jerseys and the love of jerseys. I believe, and Darren, you alluded to this, it's both. I mean, everyone wants their collection to be worth something. Everyone wants to see the upside. Nobody wants to spend millions and millions of dollars on crazy stuff like tickets and it'd be worth 20 cents. So what MeiGray has done, and I've said this from day one, is we are going to add value to your collection, but we're going to do it the right way by proving something and standing behind it for life. So that's what I believe photo matching is. The Babe Ruth, I don't know if anybody thought it was going to go for more than 10, 15 million until MeiGray photo matched it. Because without a doubt, we proved, and it was Heritage Auctions, and we said, you can now say this has been photo matched by MeiGray. And we believe that it took me 27 years. My company's 28 years old, but it took, I believe, 27 years for the hobby to accept, appreciate, and then demand that in game-worn jerseys, photo matching is the proof you need, and it gives the relic not just added value, but to me, the value. Because it's not, I knew a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy's brother-in-law. It's, here's the jersey, here's the chain of custody, here's how it came to be, and here's the proof that it's real. So that's my collection. You know, I'm a collector as well as the chief operating officer of MeiGray, and I'm a New Yorker. I'm sure you can tell by the accent. And I collect New York Championship shirts. So I thought I'd bring one more shirt, which a couple of you Giant fans may remember that game against New England a couple of years ago. So if you're a New England fan, I don't apologize. This is the jersey that Plaxico Burress was wearing when he scored the winning touchdown with 39 seconds left.
And when you see the back, and then you see the photos, and
Unwashed.
Oh yeah, definitely unwashed. So here's the photo. This is what we do. This is what MeiGray Authenticated does. If you buy that relic, you're gonna buy this. You're gonna get this photo with it. That this is a picture of Plax being hugged immediately after he caught the winning touchdown. And here is where we literally break it down and show you the holes in the jersey, the red marks, the green grass. And we think MeiGray has taken the hobby to a different level in that it's not just that you know it's real, is that we prove it's real. And that's what we do.
Now, when did you pick this jersey up? Was it at the time when they won? Is it?
I actually got it from a private collector who got it out of the locker room about 3 or 4 years after. Don't ask me why he sold it. I didn't.
Okay.
I just signed the check and moved on.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What's the typical chain of custody of ownership of these jerseys after a championship game? The rights to the league, the team, the player? How does that typically?
It varies based on the deal, but I'll give you one example. I'll give you 2 examples. One involving a player and one involving a team. So when we make a deal with a team, there's always Stanley Cup Finals clauses, or in the case of the NBA, because we created the NHL MeiGray Game 1 jersey program, again, with this whole authentication system in mind. We created that in 2002. The NBA came to us 4 years later and said, could you do for us what you did for the NHL? And we started the NHL and MeiGray authentication program in 2006. So for the league deals, I'm literally in the anteroom to the locker room. I'm not in the locker room, I'm in the room next to the locker room, literally taking the jerseys after the players take them off, after the champagne and blah, blah, blah. And I go right back to the office, flying, and then we start photo matching. Even though I've taken it out of the players' hands, that's the degree of necessity, because I've seen a lot of things happen. I've seen players take a jersey off and put it in their bag and take another one out. I've seen a lot of things, and I believe in protecting this hobby. As a collector, and as someone who represents MeiGray, we have to photo match everything, even if the player takes it off his back and hands it to me. And that's my segue into, so we worked with the Washington Capitals since 2002. Alex Ovechkin was drafted in 2005. He just broke Wayne Gretzky's unattainable record for the most goals for one player in the history of the NHL. He scored his 894th goal late last season in Washington, and 3 days later, or 2 days later, in Long Island, broke what was thought to be an unbreakable record, Wayne Gretzky's 895th goal. And since MeiGray had an arrangement with the Capitals, the other exclusive game-worn source, we sat down with Ovechkin's people and said, we have to authenticate this jersey. This is one of the great jerseys of all time. Now, if you know something about Ovechkin, Ovechkin has said publicly and has done privately, he's planning to build a museum in Russia when he returns after his career, and has tried to take as many of his artifacts as possible. We had an exclusive to the jerseys, but we worked it out with Ovechkin that he was going to wear 5 jerseys that game. For warm-up, first period, second period, third period, and one TV break, because he has 2 sons, and he was going to keep the jersey that he broke the record in. MeiGray had the rights to 1 jersey, and the team wanted the jersey. The Hall of Fame, they were number 6 on the list. And incredibly, Ovi, who has a flair for the dramatic, I guess you have to, he's now up to 901 goals, wore his jersey in the warm-up, wore the jersey in the first period. In the second period, he scored 5 minutes in, 6 minutes in, and we had this prearranged. After the 1,000 people came on the ice, and Wayne Gretzky came on the ice and hugged him, and his wife came on the ice and hugged him, and his mom, and family members, and all the Islanders, Alex Ovechkin came over to the bench where I was standing with a plastic bag with another Ovechkin jersey. Now, I was really nervous. I knew I was going to be on national TV. I knew this was going to be a big moment for the hobby. Authenticating in real time one of the greatest records in hockey history. Imagine if Hank Aaron stepped on home plate after he broke Root's record and somebody was there to take the jersey off his back, authenticated. That's what I was doing. But I was nervous. What if he forgot? What if something went wrong? I'm sitting there with a bag, a very unobtrusive, some kind of supermarket bag, behind my back. I have my MeiGray shirt on in red, so my friends and family could see me on the bench. And he comes over, and again, if any of you know hockey jerseys have what's called fight straps. When the players fight, sometimes the jerseys get lifted over their head. So they have this Velcro thing with a buckle to keep it in their pants. So Ovechkin is skating over after a million things are going on, and I see him going like this. And I know he's unsnapping his snap. So I push my way past Gretzky, push my way past half the team, and get onto the bench so that I can change jerseys with him. And my heart is beating, but I see him, he takes the shirt off that he's just broken the record with, hands it to me, I hand him a new one. I had a little office set up in the back to put it and lock it up until the game was over. And he changed 2 more times. He wore 6 jerseys. We had, believe me, enough so that the Hall of Fame could get one. And it's one of my proudest moments as for the hobby, that our hobby had come so far that one of the greatest records in hockey history was chronicled in real time. Ovechkin owns that jersey. One is at the Hall of Fame. One is with the team. His 2 sons have one. And MeiGray got to keep the jersey he finished the game with, where after the game he was doused with beer by his teammates. And it's on display in our offices right now. And it is my proudest moment in collecting the growth of this hobby and where it's come in 28 years.
So when you're telling that story, it made me think of a very similar story further back. And you probably know about this, obviously. When Pete Rose broke Ty Cobb's record, he did a very similar thing for selfish purposes.
Right.
You know,
And there's 7 of those that he swore he wore.
right. So can you explain what happened during that game when he broke Cobb's record and the jersey changing, and there was no MeiGray to keep track of this? This
Right.
was his own.
And there are a million reasons why I had this light bulb go off my head in 1996 to start this company in 1997. That's among them. Pete Rose, and I don't mean to cast aspersions, but he was a thief and he was a liar. And I know that, again, I won't say anything I can't prove. I have had jerseys come to me with letters of authenticity from Pete Rose saying I wore this jersey at this date, this time, I did this, where he did not. So he did wear multiple jerseys that day. But I don't know how many he said he wore as the one that broke the record. But it's my job, it's MeiGray's responsibility for the hobby to say yes he did and no he didn't. So
And that's
there's
not
too much of that.
Right.
There's too much of that in the past. It still goes on now, and that's why I think MeiGray carries such an important role in the hobby, because we will prove yes or no.
Right, yeah, and that's not an opinion, that's a fact based on photographic evidence. It's not saying.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because if any of you have a shirt, if you have 2 copies of the same, no shirts are alike. One may get a little buttonhole tear, and we really do forensic work. The work we do is remarkable, and we have had teams and leagues asking us for demonstrations where it really, the best comparison I can give you is detective work, where no 2 fingerprints are alike, but you put a fingerprint under 5,000 times microscope, you can see the differences. And that is literally what we do a lot of times to prove that yes it is, no it isn't.
So with that, that's a good segue into how we first met and a big reveal. Real quick, I do want to ask you a question. We were talking about the Logo Man card, $13 million with Darren. You're a part of that in a way just because a piece of a game-used jersey is inside that card. One from Kobe, one from Jordan. We don't know where those jerseys came from. Now, in the last year, you've photo-matched jerseys. One that Michael Jordan wore 17 games, I think it was, and he was featured on the cover of Sports Illustrated in it. And then a Kobe jersey that he wore in Game 3 of the 09 Finals. And collectively, I think those 2 jerseys, full jerseys, sold for, I think the Jordan was $2.6 million, and the Kobe was $900,000. So, as a collector, as the expert, would you rather own the full jerseys? Is it a sin to chop those logos off, or because Chris and I, we say it all the time, those 2 jerseys would look sick on that display right over there. We wish we had them as opposed to the card. But
Okay, first I'll tell you what I know.
okay,
When I started my NHL deal, and when I started my NBA deal, I went to the leagues and said, what are you giving your card companies? And they're saying, oh, they're buying game worn jerseys. I'm saying, what are they buying? Who knows that they're game worn? One of the things I don't mind saying to this group, I've said it before and I'd say it to anybody. The card companies ripped the card companies ripped the card collectors off for years. Because I know for a fact, because of guilty pleas and testimony and the wrong color swatch being caught on the card, that the card companies weren't watching, because who's going to know that a 1x1 swatch was or was not worn? Who's going to know that a Logo Man was or was not from a particular player? It's a Logo Man. So I know that did happen. When I started my league deals, I insisted and put in the contract that any jersey that goes to a card company has to be authenticated first by MeiGray. I wanted to protect, and I'm not saying this to beat my chest, I'm saying this because MeiGray is successful now 28 years later because we care about the hobby and we care about the industry. Look, I'm not an idiot. It's better for all of us if the industry is as clean as can be. Everybody on the stage today talked about what you guys all know. The cleaner the hobby is, the better it's going to be for all of us, and it's the right thing to do. So we started photo matching jerseys in 2002 for the card companies that work with the NHL, in 2006 for the card companies that work with the NBA. What I couldn't get done to this day, and again, I don't mind saying it, we wanted to be part of the process that proved, just because I gave the jersey to Upper Deck, I don't know if that's the swatch they cut. So to this day, I have doubts that these cards have actual jerseys from actual players. I can tell you that I sold every game-worn jersey to Panini, to Topps, to Upper Deck, to the companies, that I gave them a game-worn jersey, and I tried to make deals in which they allowed me to watch the process. Couldn't get it done. Have not gotten it done. I would urge every league to improve their process, because I don't know that logo man is actually logos that were worn on Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant jerseys. I can tell you that I sold Upper Deck, Panini, Topps, game-worn Kobe Bryant jerseys. Now, the other part of it, I don't understand, but someone said it, I don't know who said it, but one of your earlier guests said, and you said this, Chris, several times tonight, collect what you want. God bless a card collector who would rather pay $13 million for this than the game-worn jersey 1 of 1. Everybody gets to do what they want. I won't pay for a souped-up Camaro from 1969. I just drive a nice car, and I don't care about cars. But people care about cars. So to each his own, collect what you collect, buy what you buy, but being in the hobby, I don't understand. I think this is the 13, Mr. O'Leary might have 2 logo men off, I don't want to name any other player. Who knows if it's Michael Jordan?
Brian Scalabrine.
Yeah, well, Brian Scalabrine. And we'll never know, even though MeiGray has said to the leagues, we can help you know. So the rest is up to the hobby.
Cards have always been the backbone of the hobby, we'll say. That's usually how people get involved first, and then they branch out to what they love, jerseys, gloves, whatever it is. But I always think that because cards are the backbone and the biggest thing, they're always going to bring the biggest prices. Now, give them the benefit of the doubt and say those are the logo mans from those jerseys, which everyone's assuming. Obviously, they paid $13 million for it, but it's not from a finals game. It's not the MVP. It's not where he had a scoring record. It's probably an average game he scored 10, 20 points or something like that.
Well, that's absolutely true, because one of the things people have always asked me, does it bother you that you tear up, you're into game worn? Isn't it sacrilege to see a scissor cut up a jersey into 100 pieces? I'm actually on the card collector side on that. I say no, because I can tell you how many jerseys Alex Ovechkin wore in his career to within 1 or 2, and that's only because I can't count the list. We keep population reports. Again, MeiGray has done everything it can to help the hobby make the decisions it needs to make. I know how many jerseys Alex Ovechkin has worn his entire career, because I've authenticated every one. If he's worn 682 and 27 are cut up, who cares? We never sold, nor would we ever sell, a historic jersey to a card company. I can't help it if they get it in the secondary market. But we've always said to, again, the teams and leagues, we'll service the card companies, but the best stuff stays in the hobby. So you'll never see me even considering a Babe Ruth or anything that's really vintage and rare. But if it's one of 36 jerseys that LeBron wore last year, I have no problem with that.
Yeah, it gives collectors. Yeah, give it up, everybody. There's obviously a thorough process. You're a collector, you're an executive in the hobby, but you obviously care about it, the authenticity of it, and your thorough process, which leads us to our closing segment.
We talked about it.
Oh, we're not.
Let's find out.
Oh, what's that?
Did you bring an item of ours with you?
No, we're not finished.
Oh, you're still working on it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I thought we would finish up, but we're not.
So just explain real quick.
All right, sorry.
I'm sorry.
So when we met Barry, we gave him a Green Bay Packers sweater, and inside the collar is hand-stitched V. Lombardi. So
Vernon Lombardi.
yeah, so his cousin Vernon. So I'm sorry, I didn't know that you guys discussed this. We were hoping. So hopefully you guys are still working on it, and we're getting closer to a photo.
Well,
match.
here's the problem. The problem is we can't find a photo of him wearing that, because it was his personal sweater.
Right.
It's not, he never wore a sweater outside at a game with something not over it. We have not found one photo of Vince Lombardi not in his Packers garb.
Okay.
So that's why I had hoped we'd be there by now. I thought we were, but we're still looking.
No worries.
And we'll look till the end of time to find him, because the story's amazing. Why don't you guys tell the story, because it's your relic.
Well, you can go on the story.
All right, so
But real quick, we tried to photo match ourselves because we thought we could do what he does.
we're not Barry yet. Oh, not even close.
Google Images, yeah.
I could rock a blazer, but
But it was funny. Every photo we did see of Lombardi on the sidelines, you could tell he has the sweater underneath. You could see the green and yellow lines around the collar. But what's on top every time is that trench coat, that iconic trench coat.
and you can't prove a photo match if you can't photo match him.
Yeah, so in addition to his name stitched in the collar, the number 1 is also on the side of it. So who would wear the number 1 on a football team in the 60s?
Vernon Lombardi.
Vernon Lombardi, as Darren said. So, but the story, we spoke about it with Barry, and we know it's real, we know it's legit, we know it was Vince's, because it comes with a great letter of provenance and chain of custody. So for those who don't know, Lombardi was part of the Redskins, now Commanders, but after his time with the Packers. So during the 68 playoffs, I think it was, late...
68 was the last year he was with the Packers.
So 68 playoffs, now he's going to the Redskins. He goes to the owner's house, Edward Bennett Williams, and he goes to watch the playoffs with his new boss. And he shows up as a member of the Redskins in a Packers sweater. And Bennett Williams says, "What are you doing? You're with us now. You can't be wearing that." So he hung out and he watched the game with his son, and a few days later, a package arrived, and in the box was the sweater that he gifted to Edward Bennett Williams' son. And we have the letter that the son wrote, and it's got a great chain of custody, and we're hoping that Barry can find a match one of these days. Keep working on it, though.
Well, we won't stop. We won't stop.
Barry, will you ever say that you think, I know you don't want to say anything about thinking, but would you ever say that the threading that it looks like it would be give something else other than it definitely matches? Like, this looks like the V Lombardi was sewed using yarn from 19 whatever it was, or that it looks like it's authentically labeled.
Well, that's part of the process, yes. That is part of authentication. MeiGray has authenticated items that are not photo matched. Photo matching is 100% conclusive proof. But there are many jerseys. I've spent 27 years trying to photo match this jersey, but this is a kid who played on the road in a junior league, and there's 2 photos of him all year, and they're both in gold, the home gold jersey. So we recognize that not everything is photo matchable due to perhaps the absence of photos, perhaps to the absence of the quality of the photos, etc., etc. So chain of custody, provenance, these are all other factors of authentication. As far as photo matching, we're going to have a photo, but authentication is another very important part of what MeiGray Authenticated does. And yes, we would have to have provenance documentation, a letter from the son. Didn't you guys ask, weren't you at one point looking for something to show or you guys told me that there was you were checking to see if there was proof that it was actually mailed from Green Bay. I mean, these are all things that we've done.
We're nerds, yeah.
Yeah, we have looked at, when you hear a story, I got it from a brother who knew the brother. Okay, what's your brother's name? We'll call the brother. Well, there's many ways to authenticate a jersey. But a lot of people confuse authentication with photo matching. Photo matching comes under the authentication umbrella, but authentication does not come under the photo match. A photo match has to be conclusive, 100%, that's the jersey.
One more, have you ever told a player to his face that he did not in fact wear that jersey?
Oh, I got a great story. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you. It'll be quick.
Sometimes the real pros gotta have.
And it's a really sad story. I'm sure many of you, if you're hockey fans, and I apologize, hockey's my first love, and MeiGray started as a hockey company because our first 3 contracts, I told you about the New York Rangers, I was a hockey writer, so MeiGray started when I pitched to the New Jersey Devils the New York Rangers. I was covering the New York Giants at the time, so I did get a football deal. And I'm interrupting myself, which I always do, so I really apologize. This will be 10 seconds. I went to the Rangers, Devils, and Giants and said, I'm thinking of leaving the Daily News to start selling Game 1 jerseys. What's a Game 1 jersey? Well, you know, your dirty laundry. What are you, crazy? I said, I'm so crazy, this is how much I'll pay you for a guaranteed contract. And I got the 3 teams. So that's where my start in hockey was, because 2 of the teams were hockey. In 1972, an auction house called me with a Bobby Orr jersey. And for your hockey, Bobby Orr is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, hockey player of all time. And they were about to auction a 1972 Stanley Cup Finals Bobby Orr jersey. And Bobby Orr's agent and best friend called and said, you better cease and desist. Bobby has that jersey. And the auction house said, I don't think so. This looks like the real deal. And Bobby Orr's agent and Bobby Orr wrote a letter himself saying, no, we're going to sue you. It's not. Bobby Orr lived in the early 70s with the trainer. And he said, you can't have that jersey. The trainer gave it to me after the Stanley Cup Finals. P.S. They beat the Rangers. It was the first time I cried as a teenager, because they beat the Rangers in Game 6 at the Garden, and I had to watch that 22 years before the Rangers won the Cup, we thought they would. But I digress. So the auction house, which was in Montreal, called me and said, Barry, can you fly up here? I'm threatening to get sued. I know this is real, but I need proper authentication. Long story short, we photo matched the jersey in the auction to Bobby Orr drinking from the Stanley Cup in the locker room of Madison Square Garden. And he said to me, would you call Orr's agent and tell him that? I can't possibly tell him. Because I was in hockey, I happen to know a lot of these people. I called this agent up and said, Bobby does not have his 1972 Finals jersey. It's in my hand. You know, I was up in Montreal, and he knew me. He said, are you sure? I said, it can't not be. I had one of my photo matches. I said, he goes, what does Bobby have? I said, I don't know, but this is the jersey he wore. Bobby Orr later learned that his friend, who had been deceased by this time, ripped him off and didn't give him his Stanley Cup Finals jersey. He gave him another one. And so these stories do happen.
Sold the real one for $200.
And this one, you know, the auction house auctioned it. It went for $174,000 or whatever. And you know, good story for the hobby. Bad story for Bobby Orr. But this kind of stuff happened all the time. So I always tell people, even if you get it from a player, it needs to be properly authenticated. Players don't know what they wore. I mean, I can tell you one more story, and I don't know if we have time.
We got one more.
You maybe heard, it was on the front page of the New York Post about 15 years ago, when Eli Manning was accused of selling fake stuff. It's deal with Steiner. I was hired by the collector who had Michael Strahan's Super Bowl jersey, because in this mess, he sued the Giants, and the Giants said, you have fakes, we have the real stuff. And I told the Giants, who I was a partner with, no, your equipment manager's ripping your players off. These were real. Well, the Giants broke their partnership with me because they didn't like what they heard. I was deposed in the Eli Manning case. Under oath, I had to say we authenticated Michael Strahan's Game 1 jersey to the warm-up, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, and the celebration after the game. That's the only jersey he wore. Michael Strahan was on Good Morning America, one of those, after he started working in TV, showing his house and showing his Super Bowl jersey and saying things like, yeah, mine is real. You can see the Gatorade stains in the front. I watched the whole game 100 times for this authentication. Michael Strahan never got Gatorade on his shirt. I knew Michael Strahan to this day thinks he has a Super Bowl 42 jersey, this same game. He doesn't believe what I proved over and over again. The Giants stopped working with us. They didn't want to believe it. 2 years later, the whole equipment staff was fired. So these are some of the underbelly, ugly things in the hobby, but this is what MeiGray does to make sure we, meaning the hobby, stays as clean as can be.
That's why you got to link up with experts, guys like Barry, like all the speakers we had tonight, whether you have cards, jerseys, Henry E. in the back photos. Get them authenticated, make sure they're legit, let the experts do their process. We're going to get into raffles. Barry and MeiGray, they were kind enough to donate these Jack Hughes game-used hockey gloves.
No, those are the ones I wore Sunday.
There you go. Men's league, scored a hat trick in them.
A photo of Barry wearing them.
Yeah, so he was kind enough to donate that. So let's give a round of applause for Barry Meisel.
Thank you, Barry.